Yeah.
Oh!
He gets away with
I'm
it 'cause
humping
it's a
the
hip
wall.
check.
I'm humping the wall in the corner. I can't move. I literally can't move, and he's humping the wall. I'm stuck. Look at him.
So fucking
Look at
All he had to do was get down there.
Hello everyone, Austin here, and welcome to today's video where I will be discussing NHL 25, one of the most disappointing EA Sports hockey games of all time. It actually, in my opinion, rivals the disappointment of NHL 15. So why, for many in the community, is this being called the worst EA Sports NHL game since NHL 15? Well, you know what? How about you grab your sticks, lace up your skates, and let's dig into what went wrong with NHL 25 and why this game is an absolute piece of trash. Setting the stage for NHL 25, I think a lot of us were very hopeful that this game was going to, it was going to redefine hockey for a lot of us. And while that might have been a pretty bold assumption from EA or from fans from a game coming from EA, I think it's pretty obvious that, fans were excited. Years and years of incremental updates and promises of innovation. Players hoped that this entry would finally deliver a fresh, exciting hockey experience. EA Sports teased new features, the enhanced graphics, and more authentic gameplay, all leading us to believe that this would be the year that the franchise got back on track. And yet, here we are. The community remains frustrated. Reviewers were baffled when the game came out, including some of the most prominent YouTubers who do promote this game for a living. And even longtime fans are asking, how did we end up with a game that feels so stuck in the past when the game is moving forward at a very, very fast rate, despite all the promises of progress from EA themselves? So let's do a quick comparison with NHL 25 and NHL 15. NHL 25 is drawing so much criticism because of the way NHL 15 was. It was released in 2014. NHL 15 itself was notorious for very stripped down modes, missing features, and gameplay that felt completely unfinished. It launched on the new generation of consoles at the time, which were the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, but so many core features like GM Connected, EA Sports Hockey League, or EA SHL, they were completely absent. In fact, EA SHL was not even added until a few years later. Fans were upset, and for good reason. That became the benchmark for disappointment in the series. When people say NHL 25 is the worst since NHL 15, that's a comparison, in my opinion, that should carry a lot of weight, and it won't, but it should have EA Sports executives kind of looking in the mirror and going, how can we improve this experience? First things first, we got to start with the gameplay. Where is the innovation? Let's start with the most important point for any sports game, the gameplay, especially hockey, right? So if you fired up NHL 25 hoping for brand new mechanics, smoother animations, smarter AI, well, you're going to be in for a massive, massive letdown. The gameplay feels eerily similar to NHL 24, and sure, there are a handful of tweaks here and there. There's been some adjusted puck physics, some slightly different player movement. The goalies sometimes do outrageous acrobatic feats that are literally impossible, but none of these small incremental changes feel meaningful. The main issues that a lot of players still bring up are legacy issues, as in issues that have been around for multiple years now. Goalies still act unpredictably, sometimes letting in soft goals or making absolutely impossible saves. Saves that no goaltender could ever make on this planet, not even Dominik Hasek in his prime. Puck pickups remain very inconsistent, with players sometimes skating over the puck without reacting at all. Sometimes the puck is in their feet and they will pick it up, but someone has gold puck on a string, so it doesn't matter how well in position you are, you're not picking up that puck because someone else has a perk that will just make them pick it up instead of you. And the skating on rails feeling still persists, where it makes movement feel a little bit robotic, a little bit unnatural, and like you're not really controlling your player. Where is the organic fluid hockey simulation that we are promised every single year? Instead, it feels like EA took last year's code, made some minimal changes, and slapped a new number on it. Moving on to the graphics and the presentation. NHL 25 claimed to bring visual improvements, but the reality is actually pretty disappointing. Player models look basically identical to NHL 24. There's recycled facial animations, there's lifeless crowd reactions. The broadcast package has barely changed, although I will say I am very happy that the score bug is in the top left corner of the screen instead of taking up a large chunk of the bottom of the screen like it was in the last few games, I should say. And if you compare this to other sports titles like FIFA or Madden, well, I guess FIFA is now called FC, they consistently push graphical boundaries. And one of the main reasons for that is the fact that those games are also released on PC. The NHL series is still stuck on console only. They have not had a PC release since 2009, which means these games, especially NHL, feel frozen in time. There are very few updates that justify its next-gen status, in my personal opinion. Now, for many players, the variety in game modes is what will keep them coming back. Most games that we think of that are our favorites, especially when it comes to online competitive games, generally have game modes, multiple game modes that we like playing, whether it's a specific type of game mode in a first-person shooter, specific game modes in sports games. Maybe there's a single-player game that has interesting game modes, but unfortunately, NHL 25 offers very little innovation here. Franchise mode remains largely unchanged, still plagued by shallow management options and a lack of real dynamics. Be a Pro is, hey, listen, NHL 26 promises a much more revamped Be a Pro, but Be a Pro for the last several years now, we all know the memes with the pricey pond hockey and all that stuff. It's just repetitive cutscenes, a little sense of narrative progression, and the amount of what I would consider not glitches, but just, when you have your character that you've created and tailor-made for how you want to play the game, always interacting the exact same way with a coach. It doesn't matter if you're a goalie that just had a shutout, maybe your skater had a hat trick. The coach so many times is like, we needed better from you. You need to step up your game. And then there isn't really any depth to Be a Pro at all. You could struggle. Maybe you don't score a goal for your 10 or 20 games straight. You're never demoted to the AHL because the AHL is just something that, that they've completely taken out of the equation. Juniors, do you guys remember Be a Pro, even on previous gen consoles like Xbox 360 and PS3, where you start at the Memorial Cup and then you work your way up to the NHL. And if you don't produce at the NHL level, you get sent down. You can be demoted, and it gave you incentive to keep playing and keep getting better at the game. Moving away from the non-online modes to the actual online modes that most people play, being EA SHL and HUT. World of Chell was once a promising online hub for creative hockey experiences. I think most of us, our most fond memories of EA SHL probably are from NHL 14, if I'm going to be honest with you, where you could pick the attributes that you put your points towards, and there weren't all these overpowered perks, like truculence or puck on a string or no contest or whatever perks you end up using in the game. These games nowadays, they're just riddled with microtransactions and recycled events that just don't feel rewarding. And especially when it comes to the playoffs sim playoff situation in EA SHL, it's awful. Right? It's just awful. There's just grind heavy mechanics and cosmetic rewards that are just no fun. If I have to go up against another person that's dressed like a beaver or a bear and have them absolutely demolish my team one more time, I might actually lose it. No modern sports game is complete without a discussion of microtransactions, and NHL 25 is no exception. The prevalence of the pay-to-win mechanics in HUT is hard to ignore. This is something that's been going on and on and on, and HUT is just completely stripped down to where you can have really good cards early in the game's life cycle, but the people who are shelling out the most money are the ones who are always getting the best rewards after every single season. Hockey Ultimate Team is just awful. I don't play it, so I'm not going to talk much about Hockey Ultimate Team. It's the one mode that I just don't touch at all. Players always do feel pressured to spend real money for competitive advantages, and the grind for rewards has become pretty darn tedious. Now, in addition, the user interface is cluttered, it's unintuitive, and navigating the menus is very slow. This is a next-gen game. Like, we're on Series X, PS5. We're at the tail end of these consoles' life cycles, and these games feel slow and laggy, like they'd be on an Xbox 360 or a PS3. It makes no sense. They're the only games that I can really recall on next-gen hardware that run like this. They're just so slow and laggy, and sometimes when you're navigating the menus, the game will just crash. So, that's also very frustrating. Now, speaking of the menus loading or lagging, even just simple tasks like customizing your team or checking your own player stats feel unnecessarily complex, and they take so long that, you don't even bother, right? Most people aren't even bothering checking any of their stats after a few weeks because it's just not worth the time that it takes to find everything that you're looking for and get through the menu options that you have to get there. Now, speaking of the community a little bit here, as soon as NHL 25 dropped, social media lit up with reactions. There were Reddit threads immediately, YouTube reviews, and the consensus was clear at the time and still is clear today. This entry fails to deliver. Longtime fans are lamenting the lack of innovation and the fact that the game feels much more arcadey, and newcomers feel alienated by the steep learning curve and outdated presentation. And I feel for new fans trying to get into this game, and obviously EA has tried to address that with the perk system. This is something that a lot of us deal with in EA SHL. A lot of us are in leagues, online leagues, where, custom leagues where they just take the perks out completely because they break the game so much. But for new players, you're playing the game, and hockey's a hard sport to learn if you do not know it. It is not like baseball where it's stop and go and you can kind of learn things a little bit. Hockey is constantly moving. Everything on the ice. You have to, if you're out of position, another player has to step into position for you. And then when you get back into position, you have to coordinate with your team on who is playing on what part of the ice. And just hockey in general, very complicated sport. But once you learn it, it's obviously very rewarding. It's a steep learning curve. EA has addressed this by putting in these broken perks that allow even the worst players imaginable to feel like they did good, right? I think we all know that there are players out there that we've all played with, whether it's through drop-ins or on a club, where these players literally have no idea what to do. They have no idea where to go positionally. They have no idea how to back check. They have no idea how to play defense in their own zone. But at the end of the game, because close quarters activated or gold one-timer activated or whatever the case is, they finish the game with 2 goals and 1 assist, and they feel like they played good. The game is telling them, hey, you played really good. You had 2 goals. That's great. But in reality, the rest of the team is looking at players like that and going, holy smokes, you're one of the worst players I've ever played with. So there's a fine line and balance that EA has to figure out here between competitive and fun. And, it's tough, right? I'm more old school. I lean towards the competitive, get rid of the perks, get rid of things that you have no control over, right? I think the game should reward everything that you have control over, where you are positionally, defensively, or offensively. If you're a goaltender, where are you in your crease when a shot is coming? And I'm not saying that the game needs to be incredibly difficult or impossible to score. Scoring's fun, right? I think a few years ago, I think it was NHL 21 or NHL 22. I can't remember which one specifically. Goal scoring was so hard to come by online. People complained about it. And then this is where all the perks stuff comes in. And now it's just so easy to score goals unless you're really coordinated with a 6 stack and you understand how to play the game. You're giving up 5, 6, 7 goals every single game in EA SHL. It's absolutely brutal. And playing drop-ins on your own, like I said, you end up playing with players who don't know what they're doing. And even if you try and help them, it doesn't matter. That's not what they're there for. They're there to just put the puck in the net. Whatever your opinion is on that, I want to know your thoughts in the comment section below. So why did EA Sports let NHL, this whole series, I should say, fall so far behind its competition when we think of FIFA or we think of, Madden? Now, there's a few reasons that kind of stand out. Number one, obviously, would be the annual release schedule. When you have an annual release schedule, especially when it comes with a team that is much smaller than what FIFA or Madden get, because you have to look at how big the revenue is compared to the games that they're making. NHL, obviously, is the sport that falls behind. And even in the United States, we see that with the TV ratings as well. NHL consistently rates below the NFL, MLB, NBA. The NHL is usually always fourth in every category when it comes to popularity. This is a sport that is obviously very popular in Canada, but it's also a sport that prices people out. So not even an average person can really afford to play the game anymore. And a lot of us who can't afford to play like to try and buy the games every single year. But because it's yearly, you lose the ability to build a foundation, right? Every year just feels like there just isn't much more being added to the game to make it feel different enough. And if they try and make the game too different, well, then that can also create problems, right? Like I mentioned, budget priorities. The NHL franchise receives fewer resources and much less focused development cycle. And the microtransaction focus for live service games is not just an NHL issue. This is a gaming industry-wide problem that has shifted the attention away from meaningful gameplay improvements or modes. And we even see it in EA SHL, right? They have battle passes now in EA SHL. They have cosmetics where you can buy characters that look like beavers or moose or whatever the case is. You can make yourself look like an alien on the ice. The Fortnite-ification of the sports games is happening right in front of our eyes, and it's something that is incredibly disappointing and something that, as a longtime fan of the series, just wishes they would revert on and just focus on the modes and the gameplay. Obviously, this review has been very negative. The way I talk about the game, dev cycle, how it plays, a lot of you are probably out there going, hey, just don't buy the game. Obviously, that is a very reasonable discussion that we could have. Just don't buy the game. Yeah, I get that. However, hockey is like, it's at least for me personally, it's my life. And this is something that, I like to be part of every single year. I am part of a league that is very welcoming and open, and the community is passionate. And I love that passion. I think hockey fans are the most passionate sports fans on the planet. And despite all the criticism that I've had for this game and, the series as a whole, there is some hope for change. Maybe, like I mentioned, the passion of the NHL community, continuing to voice its concerns, advocating for smarter updates and a renewed focus on the player experience. Bringing back old modes like GM Connected is something that so many fans have been asking for years, and EA, for some reason, just ignores us. But hopefully, if we just keep asking for it, they're just going to be like, hey, fine, here you go. Obviously, I would hope it's more than just, hey, fine, because you'd have to actually make sure that the foundation for that worked like it did in NHL 14. For now, NHL 25 stands as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when a beloved franchise loses sight of what matters most. That is fun, innovation, and authenticity to the game that it is trying to emulate in video game form. Now, in conclusion, in summary, NHL 25 has failed to live up to its promises, from lackluster gameplay and stale presentation to uninspired game modes and frustrating microtransactions. This entry feels like a step back for the series. For many of us, it is the worst EA Sports NHL game since NHL 15, a benchmark for disappointment that I think most of us hope would never, ever, ever be matched ever again. So if you are considering picking up NHL 25 at this point, NHL 26 releases in a couple weeks. So don't pick up NHL 25. Yes, it's on Game Pass right now. I still wouldn't recommend it at that point. However, the hockey spirit is alive and well, but on the digital ice, it is time for EA Sports to refocus and rebuild a little bit. I wouldn't mind a year or two off from their annual release cycle. Maybe if you're doing a non-annual release cycle, you'd release, let's say, NHL 26. And then when NHL 27 is supposed to come out, you just, you can have a few updates here and there. I would rather consistent updates to a game with a good foundation than just releasing a new game every single year where things change and new perks are added and the game breaks even further. At this point, this game is literally just spaghetti code, in my opinion. So let's hope for a brighter future for the franchise and for the fans who, in my opinion, deserve much better than what they've gotten from EA. If you're still watching and listening up to this point, thank you so much. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you agree with my take that this is the worst NHL game since NHL 15? Or do you enjoy NHL 25? Maybe it's surprising you in a good way. Keep the discussion going in the comments section below. Until next time, folks, stay sharp. Keep your sticks on the ice. Take care.